We were promised a top-notch limited experience in Outsiders, and we were not left disappointed. Between sealed format on pre-release weekend and then drafting until our hands were numb last weekend, it seems, at least out of the gate, to be pretty well balanced with a lot to explore. So today, I'm explaining why I think Outsiders is phenomenal for limited format, and you can let me know if you agree. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. Thanks for checking in. Talking limited format today, and that's right, why I think it is absolutely awesome. Regardless of if it's awesome or not from a competitive standpoint, I had an S-ton of fun over the last 2 weeks, right? We had the sealed on the pre-release and then release weekend. I was able to get 2 drafts in, and I think the set looks absolutely great. So let's go ahead and recap sealed kind of from my perspective, both personal and looking across the interwebs. So our sealed was won by Oates, Stephen Morgan. He was on Ninja. As many of you know, that's what I thought probably was going to be overall the best average, but that doesn't mean it was what was going to be winning because, you know, in sealed pools, sometimes you just get the bomb. And he had a pretty decent deck. He was definitely able to stab. He really comboed his way to victory. So very nicely done there. But looking around the internet, we did not see Ninja's dominating events by and large. It seemed pretty well open. We saw a lot of Riptide and sealed. DM Armada posted a video that he thought Azalea was the best limited hero. Obviously, I had, as I mentioned, I thought ninjas were going to be pretty well positioned in the pre-release. So I think by and large, I think sealed works pretty well. I think Arachne struggles in sealed. I think Assassin probably in general struggles a little bit in sealed. But, because you got to have the go-agains and you got to have the stuff to flip into. But it doesn't mean that they couldn't show up and win one. So, again, I think sealed is what it is. Let's go ahead and, kind of go in the Wayback Machine, right? We'll do the Wayne's World thing. I've been pretty public in here in the past that certain sets, I haven't really liked the limited format. I mean, the one that comes to mind first is Tales of Aria. That was the one very much that Briar just dominated sealed. Right? And I think if we really go to Uprising in terms of sealed, I think by and large Phi was the one to play. And from a sealed standpoint, I think it's just not as good as what this is. Right? And if, we have to compare it to the best limited, in my opinion, that we've seen to date, which is WTR. And I think this one, I'm not going to say it's better than WTR because there's a lot of member berries involved with that. But this one's pretty good. It really is pretty good. All right, so moving on to the discussion for release weekend, watching and looking at drafts. I think we have somewhat of a similar discussion there, but obviously there's a lot more to unpeel from the draft standpoint. So I went 3-0 in my draft on Saturday. I was playing Uzuri, and it was a good pool for me. Let's just say that, right? I actually ended up with her spec. That alone wasn't what did it. It was actually the death touches. We had a good pool for that. We also had a Riptide go 3-0 that same day. And then on Sunday when we drafted, that was only a 6-person draft, but on Sunday when we did draft that, it was Riptide again. And Riptide seems pretty good he does seem pretty good in draft. But I do have to say, everybody seems pretty good in draft. I went 2-0 in that event on Arachne, of all people, who I thought is the worst hero. And I still think he might be, but I still did good with him, right? 2-0 is pretty, or not 2-0, sorry, 2-1, 2-1. I went 2-1 with him, losing to the Riptide that won. Yeah. I have to eat my words on that. I thought Arachne was just bad, period. And he did things too, right? But kind of spoiler for later. Attack reactions are good still. Surprise, surprise. Right, so I think that's a lot to do with this, is if you really look at who's been reporting wins. I mean, obviously there's no way to tally everything. There probably is some way to tally, but I'm not going to do it. And you'd have to have everybody report. But regardless, we collectively know that there are a lot of people reporting different wins. And going back to my Osiri thing, right? I was not drafting her on my second draft, but the pool just didn't collectively have the cards that she needed. And I think that's what's really cool about this set overall, is that given your draft pool, what gets pulled in that draft pool, it depends. It makes a difference on what the quote unquote best hero to draft would be. And then, I mean, obviously there's the draft portion of that. That's not lost on me, but sometimes the pool itself just has a better card pool for someone else. And again, in Uprising, sure, there was the Icelander and the blue ice cards component of that, which certainly factored in, but by and large, I still think that you had the triangle thing going on for the most part. And in this set, I don't think you have that. I feel that it's wide open and people have to adapt and flex based on what the card pool is. And isn't that kind of, I think, what we want? So I think, like I said, it's awesome. You guys can hopefully feel my excitement coming through the screen. Let's move on. And instead of me just praising. But one thing that I thought was really interesting about the second time I did it, right, approaching it a different way after seeing things go on and then watching other people play, was this ability to really, quote unquote, pick now, pivot later. And I think that might be, in a way, kind of the advantage that this might have over, and we'll see what the smart kids do as they get better at it, and we'll see what the competitive looks like and all that. But it's the pick now, pivot later. And what I mean by that is you could almost, I feel in this set, that you could almost go in trying to force something and then still probably pivot okay by about midway, early in the second pack. I think you could probably still pivot. Now, part of that pivot, I think, comes from the fact that, yes, to be blunt, we have two heroes of each class, right? So, for example, you could force Osiri and you could pivot to Aracne, right? Going for different stealth cards. Maybe. Right now, could you completely pivot different classes? The one we did on Sunday, we only ended up having one ninja at the table, and I think everybody about halfway through was thinking to pivot. But I don't think that in this set it's as punishing as it was before. And maybe that has to do with the fact, maybe it does have to do with the fact that there's dual heroes. I don't know. That's an interesting. Let me know in the comments. Why do you think, if you agree with that statement, why do you think that's true? Why do you think that's true? All right, so let's move on to kind of my thoughts for the individual classes. So ninjas in general, I think Katsu's better, and it's really just because I think that 3 health is a big deal. Not taking anything away from Benji and his ability to stick and get that in and close out the game, but I think overall, and we'll talk about this I think at the end too with the potential fatigue strategy, I think that 3 health's big. And I mean, that's basically it there. There's not a ton of on-hit cards by and large. There are, like 1-2 punch and stuff like that. There are cards there for that you might want to play. Like if you get the yellows and blues and stuff like that, it might work perfectly fine for Benji. But I saw a lot of time, because if you look at the commons and what they do, I saw many times when like it was a Twin Twisters with a +1 to try and keep it under, but then the next one's a 4. And you had Descendant Gust Wave, right? Also gets the +2 if you combo it, so then it's blockable. And again, that's probably by design. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I don't know overall if that is worth the 3 health. Going into Riptide, he's pretty good because of the reload. I mean, that's really it. Because you can do defense reactions, and there's some pretty good defense reactions. We'll talk about one specifically later. And he makes pretty good use of the aim token because he can flip using his bow. Of course, you already have it face down. If you defended, you already have it face down, or if you pumped, you have it face down. And then for a yellow pitch, you can flip and fire a 1 arrow. That's coming in for 8 or 9, I suppose. I mean, depending on the pump, you get it, and the arrow. But that's pretty good, right? And that extra resource is, that extra +1 is from a pitch card that's a non-consumable resource, right? Which is a big deal from a fatigue standpoint. So it's almost it's not the same as a Kodachi swing, but what I'm trying to say here is like you're putting value, even though it's a bad trade on value, it's still value that makes them either take a damage or maybe block an extra card or something like that. And I think that does add up over time. Whereas what I've seen from Azalea, Azalea had a lot harder time making use of Crow's Nest overall. I don't think she will in Constructed, but in this, I think she had a little harder time with Crow's Nest. That said, her ability to guarantee sticking damage is obviously very strong, especially depending on the arrow she's slinging, like Infecting Shot or something like that. Right, so now Arachne, like I said, I severely underestimated this dude. I'm not going to say he's pretty good, but he's a decent default, and he can do some pretty cool things. Mainly, if you're going to draft Arachne, I think you have to go very heavy into the attack reactions, and I think that's one thing that I really liked about this, and talk attack reactions later. Let's just do it now, right? I think grabbing the attack, I don't have to tell you guys, you folks, how effective attack reactions can be in a limited format where D-reacts may or may not be a thing, right? That said, going for them early, you can use them in 2 of the classes. The only ones that you can't use them in, obviously Razor's is Assassin only, but the new Razor's Edge, right? Assassin only. The new Razor Reflex, whatever the heck it is. Hey, hold on, I'll get the name for you. It is Short and Sharp. That's right. Short and Sharp. The new Short and Sharp is dual class. So I think you grab those as early as possible, and I think Arachne becomes your default with that strategy, right? So you just grab every attack react you can. You see which way your draft goes, and then if you have no other option, he's pretty good to be able to throw a 3 with potential 3 or a 2 or whatever it is with potential on hit with the go again. If they do full block that, you could do that, and then you can still come over the top, and it's all with 1 blue because you can most of the, if not all, no, all of the stealth cards are 0, so you can blade for 2. You have 1 floating for your attack reaction. Or you can do a 0 and go a 2/6 or whatever it may be. So I think that's pretty decent, but I do think that that's really the only way he works is with sticking those attack reactions. That's the way I won every single game on Sunday, was being able to just surprise over the top. All right, so Uzuri, as I mentioned earlier, I think it very much depends on what her card pool is. It's very hard for me to not... Death Touch is a rare, so you may not even see it in your pool. But if there's a red Death Touch, you just take the card, right? Like, it doesn't matter what class you're playing, you just take the card because it's just good. Or even if you can't use it in your ninja, you don't want a Death Touch out there. So if you get one of those early, and then depending on how many 2/6s you see, even the one that if they have 4 cards in hand, they have to discard is pretty good. So again, it's very, very dependent there. She can do... Because, again, fatigue is a thing in this format, right, with only 30 cards, especially up against Rangers and stuff. The fact that you can throw a stealth card out there, make them make decisions, either way you're kind of progressing your game plan, which, as we've mentioned, I don't know if it's going to work in CC, but I think here it does. So I think Uzuri is a good option, but you definitely have to have the cards for it. But then again, you always have, if you're taking the stealth cards and the reactions, which still work for her, you can always fall back to Arachne, which I think gets you better efficiency out of those, I suppose. All right, so let's talk about some surprise cards. The one I have to own the most is how strong Frailty is in this format. I really don't think I wrapped my head around how strong the -1 on the weapons was in this format with Kodachis and daggers, Spider's Bites. Very good. Very good. Right? Sure, it's only arsenal cards on top of that, but the value of a Frailty token in this format where people are very frequently pitching for weapon attacks is very strong. So I have to own, I missed that. Others of you probably got it. You're smarter than me. I missed it, but yeah, Frailty, super strong. And then some other cards I just wanted to kind of mention that I dismissed, and the first one is Threadbare Tunic. So I had this on both of my drafts. I actually took it kind of because in the first one, and it worked out really well for the attack reactions, and then because you have attack react in Arsenal, right? It's a lot, you'll put that a lot of times there. And then I intentionally took it, I think like pack 2 on my Sunday draft. This card's good, right? Again, I like putting the 1-drop, and it could be a spring load too or something like that. This card's pretty good. Right, and to be clear, make good TV here. Gain 1, if you have no cards in hand, you can gain 1. So you're basically playing a 1 from Arsenal. It's pretty good. It's pretty good, and I missed that one. Another one that I underestimated, maybe not underestimated, but didn't realize how good it was. I knew it was good, but I don't think I knew how good it was, is Spring Load. Spring Load with ninjas, or even as a 2-card hand with a blue for Assassin, it's pretty good. That's pretty good. The red version. The other ones, maybe yellow. Blue, I actually drafted them. I got drafted. I was past a blue at one point. I didn't end up running it because I had enough blues. That card's really good. Freewheeling Renegades, this is one that I read originally, and I was like, this card's garbage. But this card in-game, because this card actually gets passed quite a bit, because it's not a great card, right? But if you can set it up for kind of what I was talking about earlier, like that Threadbare Tunic, actually I think I did do that one game. I had a Freewheeling Renegades in Arsenal, and then you throw it out 6. So that's still 6, and they have to either decide, like they have to make a hard decision. Like, do they give you a card they wanted to give because they weren't expecting that to come? They give you a card they didn't want to give. Do they take 2 extra damage? It is kind of funny though. You throw it out and you're like, attacking 6, threatening 4. It's kind of funny, right? And then kind of to that end is Widowmaker. Widowmaker Unconstructed is going to be completely garbage with all. I mean, because remember, you can, by rule, just to clarify here, right? If it's defended by 2 cards, if it's defended by less than 2 cards, it has +3. So if you throw 0 equipment, as long as it has a defense value, right? So even a 0, you can push that up, and that's counted as defending cards, so it doesn't get it. That's why it's not going to be good in Constructed. And I kind of just dismissed this card as being something I didn't want to look at. But if you go and you look at the equipment in the set, about a third of them maybe, it's probably not exactly the right number, but they don't all have defense values, and then you're counting on people having drafted them to begin with. And worst comes to worst, it always defends 3. So Widowmaker, I completely dropped the ball on that one. That one's really good. And then we already talked about the attack reactions. Very, very strong in this set. Something to definitely think about. All right, last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll get the heck out of here, is fatigue strategy. So I think there's a very legitimate fatigue strategy from like pack 1, pick 1. And what I mean by that is you could almost go in deciding that you were going to just play ninja or maybe play assassin, right? And pick high defense cards and chain enders. So cards, again, like Spring Load, just for the concept of being able to just throw basically 1 card at them, go dagger, 1 card, and then defend well. The on-hits in this set are good, but they're not backbreaking, right? There's nothing, for the most part, other than like a frailty token. There's nothing that really doesn't let you completely play your turn. And remember the Rangers, which are very popular. People like the Rangers. They like to draft them. And there's a bunch of really good arrows out there. They can usually come at you for 5, 6, 7. But I do think that there's a real legitimate strategy there for just picking good defense cards, like 3s, and trying to dagger out. Now, it's interesting to try and do that. I think a really good balancing thing that they've done in this set with ninjas, if you look at most of their stuff, it's 2 defense. So I think probably that came up. But again, there's enough, and I'm not saying like Spring Load for the defense, right? Spring Load for the fact that you can go 1, 1, 5. I mean, that's an IRA kind of, right? But it's the same type of strategy you guys follow. So I think that's very interesting, and I'm going to have to explore that as we go. So anyway, that's I don't know. I really think it's great. Just kind of wanted to share my thoughts, a little bit of my learnings on it, and kind of just celebrate the fact that it looks so good. So hopefully you noticed the nice new gear. It's from my sister in her shop. Shout out to Created by Kristen Marie. You can find on Facebook and make orders if you so desire, but I got the spiffy stuff. So on top of that, just thank you everyone for hanging out. Let me know if you made it this far. Let me know what you think about draft, went well for you? What cards did I not mention here that you super loved? Let me know. So anyway, thanks for joining. Nothing else. Go Commando.